All right, so today we're really diving deep into, well, it's a fascinating collection of sources. We're going to be looking at like the social dynamics in a very particular circle of 19th century English society. And, there's so much to unpack in terms of expectations, relationships, all that. I mean, we're going to be focusing a lot on conversations between these different characters to try and get a sense of not just who they are as individuals, but also what they reveal about like the rules of the game, the social norms of the time.
Right. And, just to set the stage a bit, the main source we're drawing on for this deep dive are excerpts from a novel. So, we'll be privy to those intimate character moments, those subtle societal critiques that might otherwise be hidden beneath the surface.
Exactly. It's like we're getting a peek behind the curtain. So really the goal here, the mission, is to extract those key insights from all these interactions, right? We want to understand these people, their relationships, and that intricate social fabric they're woven into. And, we don't want to get bogged down in plot details. The aim is to quickly but deeply grasp this world and its inhabitants.
Absolutely. Let's jump right into it. So, right off the bat, we encounter these early social gatherings and, well, the impressions people form of each other. I think one thing that's immediately apparent is Mrs. Bennet's, eagerness, perhaps even a bit of an overbearing nature when it comes to the prospect of her daughters finding suitable husbands.
Oh, totally. I mean, her conversation with Mr. Bennet about visiting this new acquaintance, coupled with her later comments about, her daughters needing an excellent father and all that and securing advantageous friendships, you get a very clear picture of her priorities. It's all about marriage, not necessarily for love, but as this crucial social and economic strategy.
Right. And that in itself is a whole commentary on the pressures women faced back then. But then you have these contrasting personalities in these social settings, right? Like Miss Eliza, she's engaging, spirited, even in conversations. And when those dance invitations come around, there's a bit of resistance there, which contrasts with those expectations of like perfect politeness and social maneuvering. We see this especially in her exchanges with Mr. Bingley. And oh boy, Miss Bingley's observations, they're pretty pointed.
Yeah, Eliza definitely stands out. She's got this independent spirit, which we'll see doesn't always go over well. And then you have Mrs. Bennet with her very, very strong opinions on rank and fortune. It's all over her comments about officers, her acquaintance with Colonel Forster, military status, wealth. These are huge factors for her, especially when it comes to, of course, potential matches for her daughters.
Which speaks volumes about societal values back then. And what's really interesting in how quickly people judge each other based on these brief interactions' appearances. The reactions to Elizabeth showing up all, well, how should we say, windblown after walking to see her sick sister. Miss Bingley's critique of Elizabeth's, well, her social behavior, I suppose. It's all under this microscope. Appearance, table manners, dancing, conversation, everything's a signifier of status and moral character.
It's like this intense social pressure cooker. And as we move through these sources, we start to see these conversations that really reveal those, um, the rigid social hierarchy and prevailing opinions. One example is the discussion about town versus country life and, the different social circles associated with each. Mrs. Bennet is, well, she doesn't hold back her opinions, especially in front of Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy. And poor Elizabeth, trying to like smooth things over, mediate her mother's, shall we say, less diplomatic remarks.
It's fascinating how different their worldviews are. Mrs. Bennet, she might appreciate the countryside, but she's clearly drawn to the social connections and, well, the marriage market, let's be honest, of the city. Bingley, he's much more easygoing, finding value in both settings. And Darcy, well, he's more reserved, even a bit dismissive, I'd say, about the supposed charms of country life.
Right, and then we get more insight into those ideas of good breeding through Mrs. Bennet's comments about Sir William Lucas, right? To her, it's all about being approachable, easy to talk to. Those who are more reserved, well, she finds them lacking. Yeah.
And then there's this fascinating conversation about the nature of humility between Bingley, Elizabeth, and Darcy. Darcy, in particular, offers a rather cynical view, suggesting that humility, or the appearance of it, can be a mask for a lack of opinion or even a subtle form of vanity. It really makes you question the sincerity of those expressions of modesty.
Absolutely. And to round out this theme, you have Bingley's lighthearted approach to, well, serious topics versus Darcy's more reserved demeanor. It comes out in their discussion about rank and stature, right? Bingley jokes about how Darcy's height might influence his respect, while Darcy is, well, more serious, but perhaps with a touch of irony, about those factors and how they matter in their society.
Absolutely. And now, shifting gears a bit, we get to the realm of courtship and those, well, sometimes rather awkward marriage proposals. There's Mr. Collins and his, well, let's just say memorable proposal to Elizabeth. His motivations are a fascinating mix, a sense of duty, a desire for, well, his version of happiness, and of course the influence and advice of Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Yeah, and the way he justifies it all, it's like not necessarily about deep affection, but more about these social and religious obligations he feels, and, oh, Lady Catherine's direct instructions, and of course he mentions the inheritance of Longbourn, and Elizabeth's, well, her lack of a substantial dowry. It really underscores how much those material considerations were intertwined with marriage.
Right, and Elizabeth's response is an emphatic no. She's not swayed by any of it. She's determined to find happiness on her own terms, which again shows her independent thinking and how she's not just going to follow societal or familial pressures.
And of course, Mrs. Bennet is, well, distraught, to say the least. She tries to get Elizabeth to change her mind, then goes to Mr. Bennet, trying to enlist his support in, well, forcing Elizabeth's hand. It's like she's desperate to secure a good match for at least one of her daughters, even if it means completely ignoring Elizabeth's feelings.
And Mr. Bennet's response to all this is, as usual, rather ironic and detached. He observes it all with this mix of amusement and resignation. His seeming indifference to his wife's pleas and his eventual support of Elizabeth's decision kind of show his, well, his more pragmatic view of life, and maybe a bit of respect for his daughter's individuality, though expressed in his own, sarcastic way.
And then there's Mr. Collins himself. His reaction to Elizabeth's rejection is quite telling. He's got this huge sense of self-importance, so he quickly moves on, setting his sights on another, still unmarried Bennet sister. It kind of reveals the shallowness of his initial feelings for Elizabeth and his true motivation in this whole marriage pursuit.
Moving on to relationships and those shifting perceptions, you have Jane and Elizabeth's conversations about Mr. Bingley's absence and that letter from Miss Bingley. They interpret things so differently, Jane is so reluctant to think ill of anyone, while Elizabeth is much more suspicious of the Bingley crew's motivations.
Yeah, and Elizabeth's own feelings, her potential biases, they color her opinions about Darcy, about others, She's working with limited information. And those early judgments, well, they aren't always accurate.
Absolutely. And then there's Elizabeth's unexpected invitation to travel with her aunt and uncle. Her excitement about it really emphasizes this desire for escape, for new experiences, maybe a chance to breathe free from all the social and familial pressures at home.
It's like she's yearning for something more. And then we get these fascinating observations of social interactions and those power dynamics during a card party at Lady Catherine de Bourgh's. You have these contrasting scenes, right? Lively conversation at one table, then this very, very stilted atmosphere at another, highlighting those differences in status and how Lady Catherine really commands the social scene.
It's like a masterclass in observing those subtle social cues. And in that environment, Elizabeth's witty retorts, her independent spirit, really shine, especially in conversations with Colonel Fitzwilliam and Darcy, about dancing, social expectations, all that. She's not afraid to challenge those norms, to stand out a bit.
Exactly. And this is where things start to shift, right? We get the unraveling of misunderstandings, deeper insights. Colonel Fitzwilliam drops this bombshell on Elizabeth about Darcy's intervention, separating Bingley and Jane. It really makes her rethink everything.
Up to this point, she's blamed everything on Miss Bingley and Darcy's supposed maliciousness. But Fitzwilliam's words plant that seed of doubt, forcing her to consider that she might have been wrong about Darcy, about the whole situation.
And then, boom, out of nowhere, Darcy proposes. Elizabeth is shocked, indignant, and rejects him outright. Her feelings about his arrogance, his actions regarding Jane and Bingley, not to mention what she's heard about Wickham, it all comes to a head.
It's important to note, Darcy's proposal itself, as Elizabeth reflects on it later, is not exactly the most eloquent or endearing. His pride and his inability to properly express his feelings really don't help his case.
Yeah, not exactly smooth. And after that whirlwind encounter, Elizabeth is reeling. She's grappling with those unexpected events, those conflicting feelings. On the one hand, she's repulsed by this man she thinks she despises. On the other, she can't shake those doubts that Fitzwilliam planted.
And it's in this state of turmoil that Darcy gives her that letter, explaining his actions, his history with Wickham, the whole truth as he sees it. It gives Elizabeth this entirely new perspective, forcing her to confront her own prejudices and the possibility that she's been manipulated by Wickham.
It's a turning point. And then amidst all this, we have Lady Catherine, ever the interfering presence, offering unsolicited advice and meddling in Mr. Collins's affairs. It just reinforces her overbearing personality, her belief that she knows best for everyone.
And then, completely out of left field, we have the scandal involving Lydia and Wickham. Her elopement throws the family into turmoil, with Mr. Bennet searching in London, Mr. Gardiner getting involved, everyone trying to manage this mess.
The news of their marriage comes as a relief, but it's a complicated relief. Mr. Gardiner's letter details those, well, rather pragmatic arrangements made to, make it all happen. It underscores the consequences of Lydia's recklessness and the need to salvage the family's reputation.
Jane and Elizabeth react so differently to the news. Jane, bless her heart, is hopeful that marriage will somehow reform Wickham. Elizabeth, however, is much more skeptical, worried about what this all means for her family.
Then finally we get to those reconciliations, those lasting connections. Bingley returns to Netherfield, his attentions towards Jane rekindled, suggesting a happy ending for them, despite all the previous trauma.
But of course, Lady Catherine, never one to miss an opportunity to assert her dominance, makes this dramatic and unsuccessful attempt to prevent any possible match between Darcy and Elizabeth. She shows up at Longbourn, making all these demands, further revealing her controlling nature, and Elizabeth's refusal to be controlled.
Elizabeth stands her ground. She asserts her right to make her own decisions regarding marriage, regarding happiness. It's a powerful moment, showing her growth, her independent spirit.
And then Darcy returns, but he's different now. He's humble in fear, acknowledging his past pride, and expressing his continued affection for Elizabeth. This change is crucial for her to start seeing him in a new light.
Her perception of him transforms. She sees his genuine change, the depth of his feelings, those prejudices start to fade away.
And finally, we get those proposals, Darcy to Elizabeth, Bingley to Jane. These unions bring happiness, resolution to those central romantic tensions. It's a triumph of genuine connection over those rigid class boundaries and expectations.
So, stepping back from all this, it's incredible to think about those social pressures, those individual choices playing out in all these relationships. Finding happiness in such a structured world, it was a real challenge.
Absolutely. These excerpts have given us this incredibly rich view of social interactions, revealing the importance of reputation, social standing, those complexities of relationships, and courtship in 19th century England. We've seen how conversations reveal character, drive the narrative, and highlight those tensions between societal expectations and individual desires.
Hopefully, this deep dive has given you a shortcut to understanding these dynamics, these nuances of the characters. It's really fascinating stuff.
Now, a final thought for you to consider. Given all those constraints, those expectations we've discussed, how do you think individuals navigated the pursuit of genuine connection, of happiness in such a structured world? And what parallels, if any, do you see in our own social interactions today?
It's something to think about, for sure.